Hey everyone, welcome back to another hardware news recap for the week. For this one, we're talking about the RTX 2070 again, because NVIDIA tried to kill it, but it looks like it's coming back to combat AMD and the 5700 series. Also, news and rumors on Intel's i5 CPUs potentially getting hyperthreading to battle AMD. The earnings reports are out for a couple of the companies. NordVPN got hacked. We'll talk about that a little bit today. TSMC investing in increasing 7 nanometer and 5 nanometer capacity. And then our own partnership with Eden Reforestation Projects, actually, which we talked about previously. We'll be talking about that today as it relates to our efforts to contribute to not technically hashtag Team Trees, but something else that we've been working on for a while. Before that, this video is brought to you by the Be Quiet Dark Rock Slim, keeping a high performance focus but reducing the footprints to accommodate full memory slot compatibility. The Dark Rock Slim comes with one of Be Quiet's Silent Winds 3 120mm fans, built for low noise operation. The Dark Rock Slim advertises cooling capability up to 180 watt TDP, but mixes in a matte blackout color design to combine performance and looks. Learn more at the link in the description below. So the first item then, does anybody remember that The Verge clip?
Some tweezers to tighten up the wires, a Swiss Army knife which hopefully has a Phillips head screwdriver in it.
Any parts of it. They're all pretty famous at this point. So after we responded to that last year and The Verge and some of the things that it did that weren't really that great, the editor-in-chief of The Verge challenged us to, in a way that was meant to be mean, to, quote, do something positive instead. We used that opportunity then to kick off a charity drive that raised over $7,000 for various charities. It was basically community choice, and we tried to retweet as many of those as we could about a year ago when it happened. That effort started with GN contributing about $1,000 to the Eden Reforestation Projects, which is a reforestation group. They work with locals who are in regions that have been deforested to reforest them, and I'll talk about more of that in a moment. But that was our start of it, and to our knowledge, just to continue the previous storyline, The Verge never responded to our challenge for them to match our donation. Maybe they're on hard times, not really sure. But the good news that came out of all of this is, as of last month, we did finalize a working partnership with the Eden Reforestation Projects to do something more official with them, and that's what we're starting today. So this all started before the Team Trees stuff, which is really great to see, and it's good timing to work on this at the same time as that. The official partnership we have is to donate a portion of the GN Store sales through November to the organization. For every item sold through the GN Store through November, we'll be contributing to and working with Eden and our distributor for the store to plant a minimum of 10 trees per item. So that's not just per order, we're doing it per item. If you have multi-piece orders with, say you order 5 things, then we're gonna work with our distributor, with Eden, to plant 50 trees for that at a minimum. And this is gonna be going on all through November. Our store is pretty loaded with cool stuff. We just restocked the Modmats. If you've wanted a large Modmat for a while, you didn't want to be on back order, they are in stock now. They sell out extremely fast, so now is a good time to grab one, and we'll also do the additional donation to Eden Reforestation Projects to get some trees in the ground and deal with the massive climate crisis that we have. Your GN Store purchases are what have allowed us to pay for all of our own flights to events these days. We cover 100% of them at this point. We buy products for reviews, and we remain fiercely independent from outside influence because of the support from the community. So if you already have all of our merch, or you'd just like to donate instead of picking something up, we also have a page set up for that at edenprojects.org/gamersnexus. And if you want to do a donation to their cause to get some more trees in the ground, GN will match up to an additional $1,500 of donations from our viewers during November of 2019. And then if you missed the original story about this a year ago when we covered this and started the campaign, if you don't know, Eden Reforestation Projects has a very low overhead. It ends up being about 10 cents to 35 cents per tree, 35 on the high side for things like mangroves, and solves 2 problems at once, which is getting trees out and climate change, and then also extreme poverty. And they do this through a few different methods. One of them is Eden works with areas that were forest, like old growth forest, and have been deforested for things like maybe charcoal, and they're reforesting those areas with various species. So it's not like it's all just one type of tree that'll get a disease and kill the whole forest. They actually work on it from a scientific standpoint, which is something we obviously very much agree with. And Eden also works with impoverished locals, so it gives them a job and then also incentivizes the continued protection and advancement of that forest and its ecosystem, so it's sustained, hopefully, ad infinitum, forever, after it's put in the ground. And then we'll make the campaign contributions through November and follow up with you probably maybe once a week in the news videos. Okay, first real news item. The RTX 2070 coming back. Some of our board partner contacts have reached out to us and corrected us after our 1660 Super. It's a bit of a flooded market right now. The 1660 Super, which was phenomenally low view count across the board for everybody, basically. In that review, I had a segment where we went through, here's all the cards top to bottom, which one's dead, which one's alive from the RTX series and GTX series, because NVIDIA's killed a few of them in the last year and has introduced some new ones. One of the ones that I said was dead, and this is technically currently correct, was the 2070 non-super. NVIDIA originally killed the 2070 in an official capacity. They told us this on record, we published it, it's all known, when the Super Series launched. And it was replaced with things like the 2060, 2060 Super, both alive, the 2070 Super, and then up from there. 2070 was gone. It sounds like that card's coming back to the extent that we've actually heard about some of these board partners from the partners ordering a completely new set of the GPU to put on their cards to revive their lines. And the reason for this is apparently AMD's 5700 and 5700 XT series, the XT specifically though, it can't be kept on the shelves at this point. That's a matter of two problems that AMD has. One of them is a good problem, which is that the card is extremely popular and people are buying it. The other one is a problem that's out of their control, which is that supply is short for 7 nanometer, and so they've got an issue of having difficulty meeting supply to begin, or demand to begin with because of their supplier, and then also demand is high, which is overall a good problem to have, but that's why the 2070 is theoretically coming back. It's because the XT, from what our partner contacts who work with NVIDIA have told us, the XT is outstripping the 2060 Super so hard in sales that NVIDIA needs to bring something back to compete at the price point and performance level of the 5700 series cards. Next one, AMD's Q3 2019 earnings. This is AMD's best quarter since 2005, and it's driven by AMD's success with its 7 nanometer portfolio. AMD recorded its most profitable quarter since 2005, as stated by AMD CEO Dr. Lisa Su, who said, quote, "Our first full quarter of 7 nanometer Ryzen, Radeon, and EPYC processor sales drove our highest quarterly revenue since 2005, our highest quarterly gross margin since 2012, and a significant increase in net income year over year. AMD reported a revenue of $1.8 billion for the third quarter, a 9% year-over-year increase, and an 18% quarter-over-quarter increase. AMD's computing and graphics segment saw a 36% year-over-year increase, thanks to burgeoning demand for Ryzen 3000. AMD also notched record EPYC sales thanks to the 7nm Rome, which so far has seen adoption from Google, Twitter, Microsoft, Dell, HP, Lenovo, Cray, and government. And AMD's GPU business saw a slight decrease quarter over quarter due to increased mobile sales, but AMD reports that the ASP, or average selling price, is up year over year thanks to increased sales in retail channels. AMD's enterprise, embedded and semi-custom segments like consoles and other portable devices recorded a 27% year-over-year decrease and was partially offset by the increase in AMD EPYC sales. And AMD EPYC sales is also why there were some initial supply issues with Ryzen 3000 because a lot of the chips were being pulled for EPYC. So good news for AMD. We'll talk about Intel's quarterly report in a moment. But first, there's the rumor that Intel's i5s may get hyperthreading. This was a similar rumor out for i3s recently, and now it's out for i5s as well. So Intel's offense against AMD thus far has been less about cutting prices and more about exposing highly price segmented features to downstream products in the stack, including more cores, PCIe lanes, or even binning. This has changed a little bit in that the last couple of weeks, Intel has finally cut some prices, including in its 9900K and KF products, with the KS slotting in now where the K was. And Intel's also cut the 7980XE. We actually didn't realize this until we checked for other reasons. The 7980XE is now about $1,000, so it's been cut 50% from its original selling price. So that's been Intel's battle to try and keep some interest in the market. The i3 models were purportedly gaining hyperthreading with the upcoming Comet Lake, but it appears that Intel also could extend that feature to the i5 products. Another Psy Software bench entry was spotted by Twitter user momomo_us, who's actually spotted a lot of these that have turned out to be accurate. And it seemingly indicates Comet Lake includes 6-core 12-thread i5 parts. The entry in the database doesn't offer anything particularly identifying other than it being an Intel CPU with 6 cores and 12 threads. This reinforces the idea that Intel is willing to bolster its entry-level and mid-range chips with features traditionally reserved for higher-end SKUs, such as the i7 models, which actually did have hyperthreading stripped recently, but maybe it'll come back. For now, it looks like Intel is planning to bulk up the flagship i9 model with 10 cores coming out, although it will have there'll be higher end models too, like 18 core parts. But the 10 core 20 thread part will be most interesting for the upcoming rumored CPUs, and we'll see where that goes. Intel, also in the news for being locked in a patent war with Fortress. So Intel has filed an antitrust lawsuit against SoftBank-owned Fortress Investment Group after Fortress filed suit against Intel, alleging that the chip maker's entire catalog since 2011 is infringing on patents owned by Fortress. In Intel's filings, Intel states that Fortress acquired more than 1,000 patents with intent of stockpiling them in anti-competitive aggregation. Intel's filing suggests that Fortress is willing to bet companies would pay up rather than go to court and challenge the patents. Quote, one way in which Fortress has tried to turn around its performance and justify SoftBank's investment in it is through increased speculation on patent assertions. Intel brings this complaint to end a campaign of anti-competitive patent aggregation by Fortress and a web of patent assertion entities that Fortress owns or controls, the filing reads. If you're wondering about which patents they are, most of the ones in question are the ones that SoftBank and its companies acquired from NXP Semiconductors. SoftBank also owns ARM, another massive Intel competitor. Up until Ryzen was probably Intel's biggest threat, and has a war chest full of its own patents. Intel, for its part, seems to be more than willing to see how SoftBank and its company's patents hold up in court. So we'll be following this story as it slowly crawls through the court system. NordVPN up next. You've heard about this story almost certainly at this point. We also recently posted a tweet and a YouTube community post about the NordVPN hack. So we had before the exploit was publicly announced, we had a campaign signed for Nord to run ads for November and December. In talking with Nord's representatives and internally, we decided to terminate that campaign, and we're giving them some time to improve and regain trust of the community, hopefully implement some kind of third-party verifiable audit that they've actually fixed the problems. And it's at this point we simply can't recommend or trust the VPN until it makes the changes that are needed to improve its services, and then hopefully does a third-party audit. And after we give them plenty of time to do all of that and hopefully improve their product, we might revisit the option of doing ads with Nord, but at this point we really need to be convinced that it's a secure option. This is a matter where a VPN having a security vulnerability is going to be true for probably most of them, but it's a twofold issue of one, literally your only job is security, so kind of screwed up there. And then two, didn't publicly disclose the vulnerability until about a year later. So there's a massive trust issue with that one. So anyway, let's get into the story a bit. NordVPN is one of the more popular virtual private network providers, and it confessed that one of its servers was hacked last year. This admission comes after speculation that NordVPN had suffered a data breach and that private keys had been leaked, meaning anyone could theoretically set up a server. NordVPN stated that a single server in Finland was hacked in March 2018, as NordVPN was renting the server from an unnamed provider. According to NordVPN, the breach was facilitated thanks to a poorly configured server setup by the data center provider. NordVPN states that when the data center provider became privy to the breach, they didn't immediately disclose it to NordVPN. NordVPN has since terminated its contract with the provider and launched an internal security audit. So Nord, for its part, states that none of its other servers were affected. It says that no user credentials were affected. We're just reporting what they said at the moment. More on that in a minute. And according to NordVPN, the hacker did acquire an expired TLS key that, under, quote, extraordinary circumstances, their words, could be used to perpetuate a man-in-the-middle attack. NordVPN also further stated that the expired key could not and will not allow for decryption of VPN traffic on any server, and then went on to talk about its lack of keeping logs. So since discovering the breach, NordVPN has admitted it could have done more to prevent this intrusion, and that it intends to enhance security in the future. Also worth noting is that it seems Torguard and Viking VPN were additionally affected here. So our current take on this is, like I said, after hearing about this, we canceled the ad campaign that we had mostly just finished signing. And that's because we need to see them actually have a product that we can recommend. And when Nord can't do the only thing it's supposed to do, obviously that's not a product you can recommend. So part of what we like to do is try to run ads for things that I actually use, like the Thermal Grizzly products, or like some of the cases and coolers we've recommended or advertised. Typically what we do is we'll look at the product for real, like actually see if it's something that seems like garbage, and then talk with the company and say, okay, so we analyzed this, we did our testing, we're okay with advertising this. Or this actually happened recently as well. We'll get a product in, the company will ask us to run ads for it, and we look at it and go, doesn't really fit our standards. It's below the standard for acceptable in this product category. We're not willing to advertise it. And so we'll bounce that, and then hopefully they come back with something that's actually good to advertise later. So that's our practice. NordVPN is off our radar until they fix things, but we'll follow up if they improve stuff. Next one, after nearly 14 months, OEMs expect Intel's CPU shortage will persist. So if comments from HP and Lenovo executives are to be believed, in this instance anyway, Intel's 14 nanometer CPU shortage isn't quite over yet, even though it ended and then came back a few times now. There have been signs of improved availability over the past few months, but from what was revealed at a recent forum in Barcelona, Alex Cho, the president of HP's personal systems business, and also a COO of Lenovo, offered their insights to Intel's persistent CPU shortage. The quote was, "No surprise that it's been a hard year. It makes life more complex, and we expect it to continue for another quarter or two." And Cho also indicated that Intel's CPU shortages weren't SKU-specific and affected its entire portfolio. Lenovo, for its part, said that it had been repeatedly told that Intel's supply of 14 nanometer chips would improve, but said that quarter over quarter, those improvements were not manifesting. Lenovo attributed the less than stellar growth in the PC segment specifically to Intel's shortages. And then the CEO of Canalys also chimed in saying that the short answer is that we don't know. And they are not telling anybody, so nobody completely knows why. All we can do is speculate that they made a serious software design flaw. The company also went on to add that, quote, "The interesting thing is the PC vendors do not know. They have no better information than we have. There's no sign of a short-term fix for Intel's 14 nanometer shortage issues." Next one, TSMC. In an earnings call, TSMC announced it would inflate its capex spending by as much as $4 billion for 2019 in anticipation of strong demand for its advanced nodes. TSMC will also revise its 2020 capex in a similar fashion. The increased capex will be used to bolster capacity for both TSMC's 7nm class nodes as well as the upcoming 5nm node. Specifically, TSMC will spend $1.5 billion to increase 7nm capacity and $2.5 billion for allocated 5nm capacity. TSMC's N7 Plus node already uses EUV on critical layers, but N6 and N5 nodes will greatly expand the use of EUV. As such, we know that the bulk of TSMC's spending on 5nm is being allocated for EUV equipment. Meanwhile, ASML, a provider of lithography equipment, recently reported record sales of EUV lithography machinery. Furthermore, TSMC has already confirmed its orders with ASML, and responding to an investor's question regarding securing tools from ASML, TSMC CEO said, quote, "The answer is yes, we secure whatever we need. We work with ASML very closely, and we are ordering all the tools that we need." Next up, Razer announces a monitor. Moving on. Microsoft's secured core PC, on the previous topic, they have a bit of Apple envy on it too, if you look closely at the picture. That monitor stand, I don't know. Razer, you could probably sell that for about $1,000. Although the monitor is already at $700. So next up, Microsoft's Secured Core PC Initiative. This is a new project announced by Microsoft. Essentially, Microsoft is partnering with key hardware vendors to defend against firmware-level attacks and exploits. Microsoft notes that firmware attacks are on the rise, and as operating system and software-level security measures have limited visibility into the firmware layer, Microsoft has aimed to create a new way to deflect firmware threats. Microsoft will be working with silicon makers such as Intel, AMD, and Qualcomm to implement System Guard Secure Launch, or SGSL. SGSL will make use of Dynamic Root of Trust for Measurement, or DRTM, that's being built into newer silicon from chip makers and is aimed at protecting boot processes from firmware attacks. In a nutshell, the firmware will still initialize the hardware and software on the device, but the firmware's trust will be limited. It'll call upon the processor for a, quote, well-known and verifiable code path to launch the OS. Basically, the bootloader will sit between the processor and the firmware, providing instructions on a boot path that prevents the attacks, or in theory does. And if you're interested in the technical side of all of this, Microsoft and AMD have published some technical documents. We will link those in our show notes document below if you'd like to read up on more of the behind-the-scenes details. The last two news items here. Intel's third quarter 2019 earnings were announced alongside when AMD announced its own earnings. So despite the 14-nanometer silicon drought that we just talked about and the plagued 10-nanometer manufacturing woes that have been ongoing for years now, Intel still recorded $19.2 billion for third quarter 2019, reminding everyone that it is, in fact, still a large company, and a $1.2 billion increase over Intel's previous guidance for the report. Intel CEO Robert Swan extolled the quarter as, quote, the best quarter in our company's history. So I guess they saw AMD's news and said, you know what, why say since 2005 when we could just say ever? The record quarter comes off the back of Intel's new Datacentric Focus, which has seen Intel repositioning its portfolio to capture market share in IoT, edge computing, data center, and cloud computing. All of Intel's data-centric segments, the things that just were listed, enjoyed record revenue and accounted for almost 50% of Intel's revenue this quarter. Intel expects fourth quarter to bring another $19.2 billion in revenue for the company, with data-centric business growing by another 6% to 8%. Intel's PC-centric business declined 5% year over year for third quarter 19 and is expected to remain flat for fourth quarter 19. Interestingly, Intel offered some rare introspection regarding its execution on multiple fronts. Intel confirmed that it's still struggling with demand, suggesting supply will continue to be tight for the company in quarter four, and Intel expects to balance supply and demand at some point next year in 2020. Also, Intel expressed a desire to return to the 2-year development lifecycle for products after the 10-nanometer issues and is interested in retaining process leadership. And finally, TSMC and GlobalFoundries have been in our news videos lately for their lawsuits against each other. And as much as we love a good patent infringement spat, is that a thing people enjoy, between multi-billion-dollar companies, TSMC and GlobalFoundries have reached an agreement. And initially, GlobalFoundries sued TSMC. GlobalFoundries was previously AMD's primary partner for producing its products. TSMC is these days, but GlobalFoundries does still do some work with AMD. And the allegation from GlobalFoundries was that TSMC was infringing on its patents. TSMC quickly responded in kind with a lawsuit of its own, and both foundries were then seeking to halt the import and sale of chips using the respective foundries' processes from the affected patents, threatening to disrupt the wafer supply of everyone, including AMD, Apple, and NVIDIA, to name a few. So as of writing, both foundries have issued identical press releases with a joint statement, and that statement says, quote, TSMC and GlobalFoundries today announced they are dismissing all litigation between them, as well as those that involve any of their customers. The companies have agreed to a broad life of patents cross-license to each other's worldwide existing semiconductor patents, as well as those patents that will be filed during the next 10 years as both companies continue to invest significantly in semiconductor research and development. This resolution guarantees TSMC and GlobalFoundries freedom to operate and ensures that their respective customers will continue to have access to each foundry's complete array of technologies and services. The real winner for this one, though, definitely the lawyers. So that's going to be it for this one. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more. You can go to store.gamersnexus.net, and you should, because, again, through November, we are donating to Eden Reforestation Projects for each item ordered through the store. Minimum of 10 trees per item ordered, working with Eden and with our distributor. And you can go to patreon.com/gamersnexus as well. Thanks for watching. We'll see you all next time.